Hi all, I have a very exciting game to show you from round 4 of the Sinquefield Cup. Wesley So, rated 2779, was playing Levon Aronian, slightly lower rated at 2765, but Levon Aronian has been up to rank 2 in the world quite a few times in the past. Very solid, experienced GM. Let's see what happened in this clash. D4. I don't believe actually they played each other before. This was their first ever encounter. So very interesting. Knight f6, we have c4 e6, and often players with white sidestep the Nxb3 engine, but Wesley So played into the Nxb3 engine, named after Aaron Nimzowitsch, one of the leaders of the hyper-modern school of chess. And here, the Nxb3 engine, the brainchild, one of the opening brainchilds, influencing the centre through piece play, piece pressure, pinning that knight. That e4 square is contested. Now, a rare choice is played here, which is to do with the e4 square. The Simish variation, f3. Friedrich Simish also has this system against the King's engine defense, constructing a centre with f3 and e4 against the King's engine as well. So here, okay, is there a slight downside? It does weaken some dark squares. These dark squares, it slows down development, it slows down castling. Black strikes at the dark squares. d5, gaining space. So if white can castle, this will be kind of a dangerous space advantage. Potentially after castling, e4, black plays d6, which means now the bishop is opened up potentially. So taking and rook e8 and stuff like using the knight comes into mind. Knight ge2. Black didn't want the double pawns here. He could have played bishop d3, but in this position, knight ge2 is the most popular, it seems, in live book with 70 games. Bishop d3 does invite potentially this, but also maybe this is quite dangerous. This is quite popular in this position, where black's opening up that e file quite rapidly. This is interesting. But okay, so here we see knight ge2. It looks a little bit on the odd side. a6, preparing b5. That's clamped down now with a4. Now, brilliant little move here, quite rare now at move 8. Black can't play b5 because there's a pin on the a8 rook. So, you know, b5, a takes, and then what? But with bishop a5 now, b5 is becoming possible. Not only that, it's really kind of annoying here. For example, in this position, well, Wesley So played bishop d2 here. If he plays knight g3, then this is actually a loose rook, and it's shown up as a loose rook with b5. For example, c takes, a takes, and then what? This is really dangerous. If a takes, then black just wins instantly with bishop takes c3. Let's put a kibitzer here just in case. Okay, bishop takes c3, rook takes a1, just winning the rook. So it helps prepare b5, this bishop a5. Very, very neat looking idea already. This is just at move 8. This b5 being prepared with dangerous consequences. So knight g3, b5, you might think, oh, hang on. Okay, so c takes is actually kind of dangerous. But here, better might be something else. But it's still interesting. On c takes b5, or a takes b5, e takes d5 here, opening up the centre rapidly. This is also interesting for black. This is a good position for black already. So this bishop a5 is a nifty move here already at move 8. How does Wesley react? He reacts with bishop d2, which does mean the rook's less loose. The pin is broken, unpinning the knight. But it seems a little bit on the passive side. We have e takes d5, c takes d5, and now a very aggressive knight h5. This diagonal was tapped into potentially, but also f5 is very dangerous. If black can get some sort of attack here and maybe get a knight to e5, this is very aggressive stuff. In fact, One of Barnet Chess Club's honorary IMs, Neil Bradbury, has played a fantastic, brilliantly played game against Niaz Mershad once in the Loisbat Masters, which I'll have to show you at some point after this video, where some similar ideas to this game. I don't want to sort of ruin the tension for this game, but some similar dynamic ideas, shall we say, based on knight h5 and f5. We see now the move g3, so this closes that diagonal for a bit and lets the bishop potentially go to g2. If knight g3, I think this might be quite dangerous after queen h4. Yes, knight takes g3 threatened. So what does white do here? This is awkward. If protecting the knight, well, white really doesn't want to be tangled like this with f5 coming up. Not lots of threats like knight takes now and then f4. So this is unpleasant. And if castling queenside, yeah, it's just an unpleasant position to be in. Even if the king's over there, this is very, very comfortable for black. So yes, this g3 caution against queen h4. We have knight d7. The knight's coming to a really aggressive square though, hitting this f3 pawn potentially. Bishop g2. It seems okay for the moment. White is kind of secure, but b5 now. Wasn't this suppressed with a4 and the unpinning? Well, in the game now, g4 was played. Let's have a look at a takes b5. A takes. If knight takes, this position is tricky. Bishop takes d2 check. We're looking at the rook. So if king takes d2 is forced, that looks awkward. Bishop a6, aggressive. And this is precarious for white. This is getting really precarious. Look at the play. It's massive. Queen b6 or queen b8. The pressure is massive on white's position. So that's going to be horrible. Knight f5, for example, taking. Black can win a piece through that pressure. So yeah, this position after b5 is dangerous. White tries to kick the knight back. Levon is not having any of this. He's not going meekly back. If he goes meekly back, then white threatens to consolidate a space advantage, starting with knight g3. And then he's going to be castling next. So maybe like knight e5, he could castle. And maybe then he's looking forward to kicking back pieces and gaining space on the king side. So actually, after g4, enters a really dynamic play now. b4, counter-attacking white's knight on c3. Now, if white took this knight on h5, taking, here there's a check. And now, knight e5. How unpleasant is this for white? Say white just castled. Black's slightly better here. White has some weaknesses. There's knight c4 potentially on the cards, or c4 for knight d3. So this is a very pleasant position for black. Maybe. So in this position after b4, maybe g takes. Technically, it's the engine choice to do this anyway. That's the engine choice. Wesley So played knight b1. Maybe expecting the knight to go back after a check. A check is invited here. The check is played here. Let's have a quick look at this now. Now knight g3 is not such a great idea because of taking and then taking here, and this is unpleasant for white. This position, just winning that pawn, and it's unpleasant. So, after the check, we have king f1. Yes, the rooks are not very happy. They're not saying hello, hello to each other. They're disconnected. There's discoordination, disarray of the white pieces here. And yes, does the knight go back though now? Well, actually, it didn't. If it does go back, then bishop e1 kicking the queen. And maybe knight d2, and we're going to go into this c4 square, or we're going to kick the queen again, and this is not so nice. E.g. knight e5, f4 might be possible here, or even yes, f4 is probably the strongest move here. So yeah, Black doesn't want to go back here. He plays another really dynamic, aggressive move. He plays knight e5. He's wanting to sack the knight on h5. This isn't taken though. White has this forcing move option. Not taken immediately. If it's taken immediately here, then what's the concept behind this? The king's here. It's sitting on the f file. f5 is really dangerous here. Really, really dangerous. This is actually technically better for black. Even though he's sacrificed his whole like knight down there, sacrificed the whole knight. This is really tricky to play. For example, you know, h3 taking and knight d3. Black's pieces are having a wonderful time. White's pieces are just clogged, disconnected. King safety is pretty poor. The prospects for black mounting up the pressure, you know, crashing through the center, etc., is high. So yeah, we see though bishop e1, and now the move queen f6, putting pressure on f3, leaving the knight to be taken again. Now what choice does white have here after this queen f6? If he tries to like play this, then bishop takes g4. Yeah, his king can't be on the f file with the queen there. Doesn't really want to do this. Knight takes f3 check. Here, this looks horrible to take the knight here. Bishop h3 with a forced mate. Next move, not too clever. So basically, the knight has to be taken now. Knight takes f3. But the king safety has really been damaged here. White dare not take this knight on f3. If bishop takes, queen takes, then again, this is really dangerous. Either losing the rook or running into this bishop h3. Very difficult. And if knight f4, by the way, even better than taking the queen, is just queen f1 checkmate. So yeah, bishop f2 was played, trying to shield the king. Desperately trying to shield the king. Rarely has Wesley So, a super GM, been caught like this with the white pieces, with his pieces not really connected. He's a piece up, but at great cost. We see bishop g4 now, threatening knight d4, putting huge pressure on e2. Black tries to get out of this major threat with queen c1. But in this position, knight d4 is played anyway, putting pressure on e2. Black really wants to open up this c file. Look at his rooks. They're saying hello to each other. They're connected. Look at white's rooks by contrast. If black can crash down the c file, that's another attacking bit coming to the king. What if white refuses this? What if white moves the knight? Doesn't want to open up the c file. Then in this position, ouch. Knight b3, forking queen and rook. Gaining some material, gaining a rook really. Where does the queen go? Maybe even stronger than taking is queen takes b2. The rook's not running away here. Ouch. So basically, knight takes d4 was played. The pain continues after knight takes d4. C takes d4. Black's wrenched open that c file. And there's also now on the cards d3 and bishop e2 could be handy. Or rook with a pawn on d3, a rook coming to c2 to coordinate with the queen. The coordination, the attacking coordination is major here. And even this bishop at the moment stuck on a5 could come back to this diagonal potentially to help the queen. So the queen has got two killer assistants. One of these rooks could join on the c file, or this bishop could join on this diagonal here. White tries something desperate looking. White plays e5 now. e5. If he plays a natural, let's say natural move in this position. What is a natural move in this position? Knight d2. Then rook coming to the c file. And d3. Ouch. Opens up this diagonal. Prepares rook c2. You know, if queen takes... Black still has to be very careful here though in this position. The natural looking bishop b6 might be tenable for white, But here, queen takes b2 is much stronger. Hitting the rook. What does white do in this position? Because also the back row is now exposed with rook c1. So if rook b1, rook c1 crashes through for black. Look at that bishop cutting off the exit square. Bishop e1, b3. And the king's been cut in a crossfire of pins, and this rook's going to hit it. This is a miserable position for white. The king can't move very easily. If here f5 and white's starting to crack. For example, here b2 is cracking on both sides of the board. Now, yeah, so this is an unpleasant position to say the least. So we see Wesley So trying something to gain some squares with e5. Trying to actually gain an important tempo and blockade with knight d2 to e4 to get a nice blockade on e4. Often a knight on e4 will take care of a lot of issues tactically. It is taken, so will this be a heroic knight for white, getting to e4, seemingly glorious blockade square. Rook ac8 hitting the queen. Queen b1, and now b3 opening up new possibilities. Rook c2 is on the cards now. Rook c2 is one of the main ones, and also bishop takes d2 is threatened. So, pun, does So want to do this, or knight takes b3? If knight e4 here, queen f4 threatens rook c2. This is nasty. This knight is not saving white here, and there's also the f5 possibility to kick it away soon. So Wesley actually plays knight takes b3 instead, hitting the bishop. The bishop goes to b6. So d3 now with extra power on f2. a5 trying to nudge the bishop away. The bishop stays on the diagonal. Very little it seems white can do here about black's incoming threats, namely d3 and rook c2. If queen e1, for example, rook c2, this looks fantastic now for d3. If here, there's some other possibilities in this position emerging, like e4, queen is tied down to f2. If bishop takes e4, bishop h3, and then we've got this rook trapped with queen g5 on the cards. And this is a meltdown for white. Look at this. Glorious coordination of all these attacking bits. d3 check is a false mate in 3. Vicious stuff, really. If king, if queen e1 here, it looks like a really bad position. If queen e1 leads to horrors like that. King g1 was tried. Now we have bishop f5 gaining a tempo on the queen and supporting d3, which supports rook c2 and also opens up this bishop. So let's see, if the queen moved here, it didn't, bishop e4 was played. If the queen moved, say to e1, maybe much stronger, well, d3 is not possible here, bishop takes a7. So instead, in this position, e4. If this has been played, e4, and now black is threatening e3. If takes, this is just unbelievably painful. So e3 coming up. If, this is just hopeless, it seems. Rook c2, the pressure is just mounting and mounting on white. Black could even just casually take on here, or e3. And this is just not very nice at all for white. The centre pawns are just crashing through in this variation. Look how awkward the white pieces are. So yes, after bishop f5, the queen didn't move, so we'd have horrible stuff there. We have bishop e4, but now, despite the pin on the bishop here, d3 has some stuff going for it in this position, even because it interrupts the protection of the bishop on e4. d3 looks to be a very good move, as well as what was played. Let's just have a look at what was played. Check. King f1. And now the killer points here. A double attack, queen f4. Putting pressure on e4 and pinning this bishop. Making way for d3 without losing the bishop. Instead, supporting the queen and supporting rook c2. And here, Wesley So had enough of his position. He resigned. Let's have a look at the possibilities here. Bishop takes f5. He resigned here instead of bishop takes f5. d3 is crushing. Threatening mate. If queen e1, rook c2. Look at the party of the three attacking pieces around f2. No knight d2. We just take. What does white do here? White's material is not being able to handle the threats here. They're just sitting at bay. They haven't moved during the whole game, these rooks. Nothing can actually help the poor white queen defend f2 here. It's a disaster. Total disaster scenario. But what else here? If not bishop takes f5. There's nothing else. That's right, it's cracked. Let's throw in knight d2. The strongest move might be, well, there's all sorts of strong moves, but even this is possible. Even this move is possible. Unbelievable. Because if takes d3, hitting the queen and hitting f2. So if takes d3 again, hitting f2. And if queen e1, rook takes d2, the pressure again on f2. They're all crashing down to ideal squares, all the attacking pieces here in this position. Bishop takes f5 fells. Everything fells. Queen e1, we've got bishop takes e4 here, just delaying things like rook c2. It's absolute nightmare. And also, okay, let's have a look at a clinical move that existed. It was a great continuation and stuff. There was also a really super clinical move that existed in this game, by the way, in this position. The bishop, actually, it turns out, didn't need to move in this earlier position. There was rook c2 as a killer move. The computer's fine. If queen takes, then we hit the queen, double attack, and we hit f2. That's a total disaster. Winning the queen like that. And if here, rook e2 is crushing. So if the queen moves, then mate. That's absolute murder. So yeah, even earlier, the signs were already there. Tactically, white's position was a bit gone here technically after rook c2. That would have been a real bone crusher move as well. But the way Levon played it, okay, he had fun delaying the torture. Bishop f5, really strong move in the position. Yeah, it seems very little white could have done. The rook's still coming to c2 using the slow way. The rook's still coming to c2 here, and it's a crushing position. Very difficult to defend. Impossible to defend. So yeah, bishop e4, but this beautiful check and queen f4 seals white's fate here. Levon Aronian played a really fantastic dynamic game here, and I'm aware that during one of the confessionals he had mentioned in another game about playing an interesting move with e takes f3 and saying he did it because it was fun to play. So I think he's in a really great spirit to be not just a fantastic chess player in this tournament, but a fantastic entertainer for the spectators. What a brilliant game. What a brilliant, memorable game. And he's already played one in an earlier round. So this is two brilliant games from Levon Aronian in just the first 4 rounds. Fantastic game. And against what a formidable opponent. Never have I seen Wesley So in such disarray with his pieces, with his rooks, just in their initial squares. Helpless, king on f1, all these pins, rook infiltrations, etc. Okay, hope you enjoyed that one. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.